What do you think? What do you think is the? Do you have a son or you said son
son and a
73,
daughter.
right? 73. He's born 73. She's 68.
Yeah.
Okay. So the son that's 73, he asks you that. What do you think is the purpose of a man? In like, what is my purpose? What am I supposed to do? Like, if you were, and I know you're going to say to each his own. Everybody's different. Some it's being this, some it's being that. Like, what is my, what purpose do I serve in this world? What am I supposed to be seeking in life? Why am I here? Well, if I'm your son and I ask you the question, what do you tell him?
Well, I think like many other questions that are being asked today, especially in social media, the question is ceremonial more than it is substantive. I don't think I've ever had a conversation in which my son would pose the question, what is my purpose as a man in life?
You only have one son. If you had a
son.
few more,
If
one of
he
them would have
were
asked
to
you.
pose
Yeah.
that question, I would say, hey, Dumbo, look at your grandfather. Imitate that. In fact, I think I've said exactly that. Your grandfather is a model of what a man should be.
Why?
Because he was unyieldingly tough, resourceful, highly intelligent, honorable, fought in the Foreign Legion, got my mother out of Germany, got my mother out of France, crossed the Pyrenees on foot, made a new life in the United States, and was enormously proud of the fact that he was one of the few Jews in 1940 to face the Germans with a submachine gun in his hands. That's enough to be a man.
Respect, of course. Salute at the highest level.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so that's, if my son were to ask the question, how do I be a man? I'd say, imitate your grandfather.
David, so remember how I asked you the question, what are some of the heaviest questions at this age where you're at? What are some things, some strong convictions you had in your 20s, 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s, whatever, you pick it, that now it's kind of like, it's not that important. I used to think XYZ was so important. It's really not that big of a deal.
That's a very good question. Except for the concluding part, I don't have many where I say it's not that important, but I have many convictions I can remember from the 60s. I was slightly...
When you were 60 or in the 1960s?
In the 1960s.
I got you. Okay.
You've got to remember, I was not a baby boomer. I was born in 42, so I was 3 years older than the generation to which I was exposed in the classroom. And I have to say, in my own defense, I was very suspicious of the 1960s, although I participated enthusiastically, and I encouraged my students to rip up their draft card while keeping mine pristine condition. God forbid I should go to jail for my convictions. When I heard in 1964 the Rolling Stones Painted Black, which was a very popular song of the early 1960s, I realized that the sexual revolution was imminent, was about to break loose. I mean, didn't take a whole lot of perspicacity to realize that. But I must say that all of those impulses, hedonistic impulses, which seem to make so much sense, destroy everything, rebuild everything on a peaceful, sexually enlightened basis, the hell with the family, the hell with commitments, the hell with patriotic concerns, simply develop your own sensibility and live as gloriously as possible in the satisfaction of any desire, no matter how vagrant, remote, or degraded. That was part of the 60s, and it came to catastrophe. The 60s did not end well. We did incredible, incalculable damage to American society in the 60s, and I watched it all happen. I was far too jeune or even stupid to recognize it in front of me. Even my objections to the Vietnam War were puerile. And I thought the Vietnam War was a catastrophe because I was 1A. I certainly wasn't about to go off to Vietnam to see my own ass blown off. That was out of the question. My father did not approve of that attitude. He did not approve of that attitude. He didn't say anything, but every son can feel a father's disapproval. He thought there was something scandalous about not being unwilling to defend your country by joining the military. Looking back, I'm not really prepared to make a judgment. To this day, I don't think the Vietnam War has received the kind of scholarly attention that it really does deserve. It's too early. I mean, the Vietnam War ended in 1973, 1974. It's going to take 100 years before we really understand the wars, Indo-Chinese wars of succession, and don't forget they began in 1945. The French were chased out, then the Americans were chased out. But I do think that in 1962, 1963, and this remains an abiding conviction, not quite an answer to your question, but perhaps illustrates the nature of the question, that no American president could have done anything other than what Kennedy and Johnson did do. I think that's true, and that's a very curious point because it puts the entire structure of the anti-war movement in a different perspective. I have a lot more respect now than I did in the 60s for my father's attitude about honor demanding a willingness to serve. A lot more respect.
I got a lot of respect for your father's level of appreciation as a patriot to what this country probably gave him and his family, where he.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah, it's
you have no idea.
Oh, it's honorable to have that mindset.
Yeah.
If you enjoyed this short clip, click over here to watch another short clip. And if you want to watch the entire episode, the entire podcast, click here.